Right now on Tech Radio, one word, grounded.
Hi, I'm Artemis. I am a computer-generated AI voice, and you're listening to Tech Radio.
Every week online, we bring you the latest in tech from Ireland and across the world. This week, social media is the new smoking. We track the fortunes of SpaceX and how people power has played a role in grounding Irish drone delivery service Manna. Plus, we have an amazing conversation on the battle against misinformation with our guest Angelika Shargina ahead of the Knowledge Summit in Dublin.
This is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
I'm Dusty. Joining me as always, our editor-in-chief, Niall Kitson. We are melting today with the heat wave. We should be sitting on a park bench like two old men looking really suspicious talking into a microphone.
That would be hilarious. That would be hilarious.
I think it would be arrestable is what it would be.
I sound like I'm beside a building site. You sound like you're beside a gardener. I mean,
exactly.
there is no way around opening the windows today. Like usually we get, today is the hottest day of the year. This is like, it's the hottest day ever. It's just don't. If you're thinking of going outside, just don't bother. Stay in. Enjoy time with your family. It might be your last.
Yeah. Do you know actually would be good? And now I know we should be talking about the weather on a tech show, but what they do in Dubai and hot countries like that is, and this is what I heard what they do in Dubai with the Indian workers, is they're not allowed work when the temperature goes over a certain amount. Yeah. All right. But because Dubai is so obsessed with money and getting things done, is that the people who are running the building sites then fake what the temperature is and let's keep working.
That's mean.
Now, that's what I heard. It may not be true. But applying that to Ireland, I think that if temperatures in Ireland hit 30 degrees, that should be it. Just close down. Automatic, bank holiday, nobody working.
Well, do you know what? There actually is... Well, I'll call it a soft limit. It's like if it's 26 degrees or over, but there's no actual legal structure in place. It's like if it's 26 degrees in your office or over, your employer might say, okay, a threshold has been reached, go home or work from home or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's not legally enforced. So there is a number there, but there's not a lot you can do about it.
Wow, I never knew that. Anyway, listen, let's get into tech. And I was thinking about this story last night. And I often hear with people, how do I describe ourselves? We're not millennials.
Yeah, right.
We're the kind of people who say, thank God I didn't grow up with the internet. Oh, God, can you imagine? However, they are trying to ban social media around the world, and they are painting social media now as bad as smoking.
Oh, I like the way you're framing this with a they with a capital T. I mean, who is they, Dusty?
Oh, they would be those who are in charge. They'll be the do-gooders. They're the ones, no, we must protect the children. There's another phrase that non-millennials will use, right? And I love it, all right? It's like,
Gosh.
We never had helmets when we were kids.
Right.
The way it's, oh no, you have to wear your helmet and your high-vis jacket and that. We didn't have any of that when we were kids.
I had a helmet.
Made it. Of course you had a helmet. However, social media is now being painted as smoking.
Well, yeah.
And it's quite interesting where they are trying to regulate it. And there was a story out this morning about how it's going in Australia. And apparently it's not.
Yeah.
They had a group of 400 kids who were kind of in around 13 years of age or whatever. And before the social media came in, they said, okay, well, how do you use social media and da-da-da and all this kind of stuff, And they said, well, this is what we do and we're on Instagram and whatever. All right. Then I think 6 months after the social media ban came in Australia, they interviewed the same 400 kids who are now not allowed on social media anymore to see how things have changed. And after all of this research and conducting and putting it into reports, they found that the change was zero. No change.
That's
pretty much all the kids found a way around of getting onto social media anyway, using fake accounts, fake ID to make it look that they're older, or just using VPN or getting in on browsers that don't track your history and kind of all that kind of stuff. So they're just on social media as much as they always were.
Smart kids being smart kids.
Yeah. I don't know. If I was a parent of a teenager, I suppose I probably would be thinking, because we have experience of life. And that's something that we're going to talk about a little bit later. But when you see misinformation, you have an inkling. Sometimes you get caught, but when you're 13, you don't have that experience and you don't know. And are you taking things as fact? It's kind of all these people. Like, I haven't seen that movie about the Manosphere and I must watch it. But
it's good.
Yeah, but if that's what you're feeding yourself, or if that's what the algorithm is feeding you, you then just take it as fact, and that's the way you should behave. So I can understand why the social media ban is there, but because the good old internet is the good old internet, trying to regulate it is kind of next to impossible.
But anyway, like we've gone around I feel like we have this conversation almost every week at this stage. So what's the development? Because there kind of has been one.
Well, there's a couple of developments. Number one is that they are now, social media here in Ireland, what they're doing is Ireland are going to follow whatever it is that the EU do. So France are kind of leading the way on that. And I think Spain are as well. The UK are doing their own thing with social media bans. Ireland is just going to sit back and wait. And we've said it before on the show, that's probably the smart move, because we're just A, too darn small, and B, we've got so much tech in here. We don't want to be, trailblazing the way and just annoying them, So it's interesting to see that they're trying to regulate. The reason why I'm mentioning this is because they're now trying to regulate the next thing, all right, which is AI, and particularly with AI and how children will use it. This week in the Oireachtas, they are debating the regulation of Artificial Intelligence Bill 2006, which they started yesterday and is going to roll on today and tomorrow, I'm sure, as well. But the Irish Children's Rights Alliance have been calling on the government to regulate kids' access to AI, same way that they want them to regulate kids' access to social media.
Okay.
Whether it's a good thing, a bad thing.
Very useful. I mean, the stories that we're starting to see with young people relying on AI as either a friend, a companion, something even more. We're on the cusp of this being normalized, and we don't want it to be normalized, because you want kids to be able to grow up in a safe and happy environment and learn how to interact with other human beings. So if it requires a little bit of a steer to make sure that's the case, well, I'm fine. Now, as we've also discussed with Rena Maycock from Chirp, her solution is to go into the level of the firmware. So you bypass I'm totes old enough for this, but to actually recognize what kind of content is coming in and out of a device and filter it accordingly. That's a great solution. I'm very much in favor of it. They are opening up operations in England soon enough as well, I gather. So hopefully they'll be able to extend to a few more OEMs, a few more vendors. And I think that's a pretty good way of going with AI as well. If you can come up with a content filter that, is respectful but useful and puts parents' minds at ease.
But do you know what's missing in all of these things? We're not teaching kids about how to use it.
Okay, I'm listening.
Well, I'm just saying, we should be telling kids, on social media, this is what happens, and there is an element of bullying, and people are able to do it, and this is how you handle it. You need to be aware of the problem, and you need to be aware that you can do something about the problem. And it's the same with AI. It's kind of like, we all know from AI, it's, you put in a question and the first thing that comes back is, wow, that's an amazing thing. I hadn't thought of that. You're brilliant.
Yeah.
I smelled something. We need to be kind of teaching the kids on that. And I hate, I'm very against regulation. I like people should be able to go out and do whatever it is that they want to do. But I suppose, why have laws against murdering people then, if you follow that argument? I suppose it needs to be a balance more than anything else, and I think this kind of right, under a certain age, bad. I think what they've done is In Australia, is it under 13, you're completely banned? And then between 13 and 16 or 13 and 18 or something like that, you can have like a kid's account. I mean, never give a teenager something with the word kids in it.
But anyways. That's not great marketing.
But all that said, I'm a great believer in the human spirit. And this all reminds me of something that we have lived through as non-millennials, where the internet came along in Ireland in kind of the mid-90s. It started to take off. By the mid-noughties, it was huge. It was the Wild West at the time. And I'm thinking, I'm going to call it something simple, like everybody was downloading their music for free.
Yeah.
All right. How do you combat that? So, I mean, Apple, fair play to them. They came up and said, okay, great. Well, let's sell every song in the world that was ever made for like just a dollar a piece. Yeah. And because humans are inherently lazy, we went for it.
Yeah. Let's be legal and let's be easy. Two things that made iTunes work. The two things that make Spotify work and every other streaming service. Yeah. Just cheap and easy to use and legal.
That's it. That's it. We need. So I think what we're grappling with at the moment with social media and with AI is like we're trying to figure out, well, what's the best way that we can use it? And that will be good for society and take out the harm. So the Regulation of Artificial Intelligence Bill 2006, what it is essentially putting in the EU's AI Act into legislation in Ireland. All right. So it's kind of copying it and whatever they're debating. And some of the main things in that act are rules that will ban harmful manipulation. Sure. Which I think is good. And then it also does allow, though, for high-risk stuff to be done with AI, but it's done in a controlled way.
Yeah. Well, that's central to the EU AI Act. You know, it's the idea of layers of risk involved, beyond which, you know, the EU steps in and said, actually, that's not an appropriate use of AI. Of course, France and Germany managed to insert a sort of a clause around national security, which I guess is fair enough. But there is, I think once the AI Act is fully transposed into law, we'll at least be compliant. I mean, this is the year for us to be compliant. You know, from next month. Yeah, we're going to be running the EU. Ireland will be running the EU, and they will be our bitch. Is that not how it works? It doesn't work that way. What do you mean? Can you imagine? Anyway, I think what's interesting just about that whole social media and the AI side of things is that it's a similar process to what we had when internet became a day-to-day thing for people. We had to grapple with how to use it. And the internet is a very good, positive thing for society. And I think that social media and AI will eventually end up being, and I'm thinking like, you know, kind of 20 or 30 years. Don't mind you in 20 or 30 years, then there may not be any social media. Who knows? Listen, other stories this week. I'm dying to hear about this one because another advance in, I suppose it is technology, is drone delivery service. Because everybody wants everything yesterday. One thing I find really annoying with Amazon, who are having their sale thing on this week, is that I find Amazon Ireland to be more expensive than the European ones. And also the delivery appears to me to be slower. Interesting.
You know, kind of like I have some friends who live in Europe and they kind of go, or in the UK, as we all know, it's kind of, you order something on Amazon. And if you're close to the fulfillment center, they can deliver within an hour. All right. Or same day. All right. Or more normally, it's like they'll deliver the following day. In Ireland, I find it's like, that'll be ready for you in 2 days, 3 days, maybe. Anyways, speed on delivery. Once you've made a purchase, you want it. All right. One of those things is food. All right. And certainly near me anyway, in Blanchardstown, there is a service and it's Manna who have been running it, where they are doing a drone delivery service for food. So you order your takeaway and then it hovers over your house and lowers a little bag and off you go. That may be about to go. Tell me everything.
Oh, it's gone. Okay. That was very dramatic of me, but let's dig into the story because there are a few moving parts. And some parts may or may not be related to others. Okay, so I'm going to try and assemble, well, it's not quite a timeline, but it's a list of salient events, right? Because the upshot is that the Irish drone delivery company, Manna, has announced that it is ceasing operations in Ireland, that it is moving its commercial base overseas. They're looking at, they have a base in Oklahoma, of all places, but they're looking to the US, to the UK, to the UAE, to China, to markets that, in fairness, are slightly more attractive than our own little burg over here. So in a lot of ways, it's like, that's fine. We're actually going to places that will reward us commercially. But this whole situation has opened up a very valuable debate, a very important debate about the nature of entrepreneurialism, about the nature of working with government agencies, and the nature of working with people in general.
And this story kind of ties in with what we were just talking about, because Bobby Healy, who's the founder of the company, is blaming regulation for the closure.
Yeah. Now, when I started reading into this story, my initial feeling was that he made an announcement in a fit of pique, because the Irish Times had run a story the previous week about Manna, saying that it had lost a significant amount of money, something like 48 million euro, having raised 50 since 2019. And there was a lot of discussion online saying this isn't, this is ridiculous reporting. Like, you're not looking at the correct metric. When it comes to tech companies, you're not looking at money in, money out. You're looking at growth. Growth is the key metric with tech, because we know that, that's kind of it. You want to grow as much as possible. And we see it in AI. It's all about this growth mindset. And the minute you stop growing, well, then you're in trouble. But Manna is a company that's still on the grow. So it's not necessarily something to worry about. However, as you say, Bobby Healy made this announcement. And okay, he said, a lack of regulatory clarity has forced us to make this decision. So I started reading into it, and there was some wonderful, excellent local reporting, real on-the-ground gumshoe stuff by local titles, and shout out to Dublin Inquirer, because they were pretty good at this as well. And, very often when there's a service that's good or interesting, it can fail through, and, fail has many forms, but it can fail through what I would consider a lack of consultation and a lack of backing by local people. Because one of the things Ireland was accused of over this situation by John Collison of Stripe, he said that Ireland was a vetocracy. And the very heartfelt and honest outpouring of feeling was that Manna was being subjected to yet more inefficient government regulation, that the technology has moved faster than the law. Often very true. I think it's true in this case. But also that a small number of people, or even just one person, has managed to stall the development of a successful company. I don't believe that to be the case. I believe the decision to be made, having looked at what is happening in Ireland, not just at the regulatory level, but, who has brought these concerns as well, which brings me to a couple of decisions Manna had going against it. Quite recently, Manna has their delivery hub in Blanchardstown, which is where we'll be talking about specifically. But they had also applied for planning permission at Junction 6 off the M50, which I would have thought would have been perfect location for it. You're kind of away from people, and you're not going to annoy that many people with noise, which is something we'll return to. But planning permission was turned down. They also applied for planning permission in Dundrum, and that was turned down. To To which, in that case, Dundrum, kind of a middle-class suburb, accusations of NIMBYism, of, the law just doesn't know what to do, inept local government, etc. If you dig a little bit deeper into the Dundrum situation, I think the story gets a little bit more complicated, because while there were objections and letters of objection issued because of the location, but also the fact that it was going to be quite near a church. So local people were not happy over the level of noise and disruption. There's also a lack of clarity over what they call geozones, which is effectively the areas that a drone could reasonably expect to fly without interference. Unfortunately, when you have most people owning drones not aware of where their geozones are, that's a problem. When you have a case of a lot of drone flying requiring some sort of human intervention, that's a problem. When you have the height of drone flight limited to 120 meters, or is it meters or feet? Let me double check. Yeah, 120 meters. That's an issue as well. So the technology has advanced beyond those particular measures. Now, if you're somebody that has gone out to a camera shop and bought a drone, then you're at that very basic level where you have to keep an eye on it at all times. But we know we can do more than that now. So that was a big problem. And one of the signatories to the objection letter in Dundrum was actually Drone Professionals Ireland, which blew the whole case open for me completely. And the letter they sent was actually very considered. It was largely, okay, there are environmental concerns here. People don't like the noise. There's going to be noise. This is going to be, I suppose, a high volume service. But the geozones are certainly an issue. They're an issue with other drones, people that don't know these things exist, with other aircraft, with light aircraft. This is a problem. And then, skipping to the end of the letter, they say, geozones, these inherently are not a bad idea. We just don't know what they're for. And they go in and they list examples of drone usage where they think actually it's pretty interesting. And for the following, these uses would be pretty good. So they look at incident management, so Dublin Fire Brigade, the Gardaí, the Civil Defence, the Coast Guard, response teams for the ESB, Gas Networks Ireland, the Health and Safety Authority, certainly used there, private air ambulance services. One of the original uses for drone deliveries was to get medicines between hospitals. So if you were to do something similar with organs for organ transplant, yeah. And Dún Laoghaire, Rathdown County Council, one imagines for surveilling sites for planning permission and that kind of thing. There were also concerns raised over the operating hours of the delivery hub as well, which I think are quite valid. So it was a very considered letter, not one that said, we don't like Manna, we don't like their business model, we think their use of drone delivery services is frivolous. But these are the kinds of concerns that were raised. Now, when it comes to general quality of life stuff, this brings us to Blanchardstown, where you are, which I think, I want to sort of describe Blanchardstown accurately. I'm a Southsider, so I think I've been there once, but I think it's fair to say that Blanchardstown is a high-density residential area in the main.
And an awful lot of tech and industrial, well, I won't say industrial, but a lot of tech parks and office blocks and everything around there as well, yeah. Yeah.
So, for there to be a lot of drones flying around the place delivering Starbucks, I'm being reductionist here, but anyway,
Well, listen, instead of being reductionist or whatever, I have a picture while you're talking about drones, okay? You've seen videos of how an Amazon warehouse operates with the robots, okay? Yeah. And they don't allow humans into that caged area because the robots are literally, because computers are able to organize something, they are missing each other by seconds and zooming around at high speed. And there's hundreds of these robots doing that, okay? Imagine that same thing happening at 120 meters above your head.
And I think that's certainly one of the issues DPI had, that with a lack of proper definition of what these zones are and a lack of broad awareness of where these zones are, that's a big problem. So this brings me, back to Blanchardstown, which, I think I've got right in terms of my appraisal of the situation. And two things happened. One, there was 2 letters issued, or rather there was a letter and a grassroots campaign. So there was a letter written in support of Manna and their plans, which I think had 400 signatories, not an insignificant, number of people by any means. But at the same time, there was a grassroots political movement driven by people for profit, called Drone Action D15, right? And this was not NIMBYism by, a few people. This was local residents organizing, saying, look, this service is impacting on our quality of life. We don't want things with cameras, flying over our heads at any hour of the day. We don't want the noise. It might be cool to look up and see a drone in flight, but look, the novelty of that wears off pretty quickly, especially when we know what they're being used for. Again, going back to DPI's argument over, incident management, we've got the Garda helicopter here. We know if we see it, it's going to be, the first thing you do is you hear it and you look up and you don't go, oh God, the guards again. You go, oh, something's happening and they need air support. It's not a regular occurrence where, you see it and you hear it, but it's not over your head every night. If you've got a service that is noisy and scaling, that is going to impact your quality of life. And that's where Drone Action D15 came in. And they secured a lot of support. Again, looking to the regulatory aspect of it, Manna being turned down in a few places, their planning permission in Blanchardstown actually runs out in August. And they've decided that, no, we're going to keep our R&D operations, which is fantastic, good news. Personally, if it's a choice, I much prefer to see R&D work happening in Ireland. So that element of the company is going to stay. It is the actual, deliveries that will be moving overseas. To be honest, we've seen this before. A good idea in the wrong place, perhaps. For me, drone deliveries are at their best when they're solving a problem, like incident management, like last mile delivery. Delivering food isn't, when we're in a country that has Deliveroo, I don't really see it.
I think you make a good argument, just to wrap it up. As you say, it's like if you're transporting organs or medicines from one hospital to another, nobody's going to argue against using a drone for that. But no. You're right, when it comes to 100 people having their McDonald's delivered and every one of those 100 is flying over your house, it's a different. But I think the interesting thing about our conversation today is just looking at advancements in technology, both with drones and with AI and with social media, and seeing how is society grappling with this. You know, and as I say, in 20 years' time, I think we'll look back and we go, do you remember when?
And you know what? If the use of, as you said there, it's the use that, really drives people's opinions and public demand for action. If it was a case that, there was a schools friendly version of AI and that's all the kids were using, would we be having the same fevered debate about the use of AI? No.
Well, there you go. Anyway, listen, let's move on to 3 other very quick stories for this week. Really interesting report from 3, the mobile phone operator. I couldn't believe the number of scam calls that they stopped last year. And what they're reporting is they stopped, and these are the ones that they stopped, not the ones that got through. They stopped 26 million scam calls in a year.
Wow.
All right. They backed that up with 455,000 scam texts, which they stopped as well. Now, this is a report from Three, and Three are only one of the operators, and they're not the biggest. Yeah. So it's kind of like, whoa, this year they've blocked 4 million calls already, but the number of SMS texts has gone way up to 650,000 scam texts that they've done. And we're only 6 months into the year.
That's interesting. So do you think this is being driven by AI, that AI are writing these scam texts and sending them out en masse?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you see AI being used in scam and, kind of all over the place.
Now,
Absolutely.
I get scam calls purporting to be from Revolut.
Yeah.
An awful
automated
lot of
calls as well. Yeah, this is Revolut.
My mom got one, and she doesn't have a Revolut account, and she actually told the bots she doesn't have Revolut.
There you go. Well, listen,
so
do you know what? Yeah, but you're tying into our interview, which we're going to have in just a few minutes' time, which is just all about that. Like, you and I are kind of like tech nerds, all right? So it's kind of like we think we're kind of up on it, but I'm sure both of us, I bet, have been caught, all right, even though we're aware of these things. But you're right, like people like parents and stuff like that, or even kids, again, 12, 13-year-olds, who just don't have the experience, who could be caught by these things. But the numbers, I thought, were phenomenal. Another interesting little thing that this is more an engineering thing or a tech side of things. Wireless charging. We all wireless charge our phones these days, all right? And it's fantastic.
You do, I don't.
All right, okay. It turns out wireless charging is wildly inefficient. Okay? It takes a lot more power to wirelessly charge a mobile phone than if you were to just plug it in. Okay?
Oh, okay.
Now, that's when you look at it on percentages, all right? It takes 40% more power to charge your phone wirelessly, all right? So you're using 15 watt per hour on a regular cable directly connected to the phone, whereas the same, you would need 21 watts per hour to do the same charge if you're doing it wirelessly. So there's a difference of 40%, all right? That's really inefficient. Okay. Now, I'm only making the point. That's my only point in the story, is that I didn't realize wireless charging was so inefficient, all right?
You're going back to the socket.
Well, no, I'm not really, because when you analyze that cost, okay, so if you look at, say, it costs 40 cents for a kilowatt hour, all right, if you look at the amount of times you charge your phone over a year, you're going to use, say, 5.5 kilowatts per hour across an entire year to charge your phone. If you were doing it wirelessly, that'd be 2 kilowatts per hour more. All right. And the current cost in and around on average for a kilowatt per hour in Ireland is 40 cent. So across a year, it's costing you 80 cent more to charge wirelessly. So it's not an issue. It's not an issue. But from a technology side of things, it's kind of like, okay, so the wired version like works perfectly and the wireless one is, less efficient. I wonder if you were to really up those numbers then, what kind of, like if you think like there's 4 million, 5 million smartphones and if they were all being charged wirelessly over a year, what difference would that be? I'm sure it would be thousands.
See, we're in an age where everybody is watching how much they're spending on their electricity.
Wow, very true.
If you're told, hey, your wireless is going to cost 40% more, if I'm charging my phone every night, I know that's going to add up. Back to the plug.
But well, I think, if it's less than €1 a year, I don't think it's going to be a concern. But anyway, as I say, I just thought it was interesting to see it wasn't as efficient. Last story this week then on technology, because Niall, I know you're heavily invested in SpaceX and crypto, and you're constantly watching the share price and the price of crypto and stuff like that. And I don't know if you have any money in either of those things. I don't care. I'm going to imagine that you have hundreds of thousands of both.
Why not? Why not? Okay, I'm gonna pop quiz you.
Oh, right? God! Yeah, go on.
We discussed this just as SpaceX was hitting the market.
Yes, but you didn't tell me you were going to pop quiz me today, so I'm completely unprepared for this. Go on.
The 3 rules that SpaceX, the 3 rules that mysteriously changed for going to market in NASDAQ, that happened to help SpaceX pretty well.
Yeah.
Do you remember them?
I know that one of them was normally you have to wait 6 months of trading on the index before you are allowed to be included in the NASDAQ 100. And they have chopped that from 6 months to 2 weeks for SpaceX. And it does mean that once SpaceX go on the index officially, you've got lots of electronically traded funds, I think they are. And essentially what they do is they buy the index based on a percentage automatically. So it means that once they're on the index, a lot of pension funds are going to put money into SpaceX stocks automatically. So it was that one. The S&P 500 is going to be interesting because they haven't changed the rules there. And there's two rules that are interesting. Firstly, they've got the 6 month rule. You need to be trading for 6 months before you're allowed to be included on the S&P 500. But there's also a thing on the S&P 500 where the company needs to be profitable.
Interesting.
Which SpaceX definitely is not.
No.
So anyway, how did I do? How did I do my pop quiz?
You actually did pretty well. You identified the issue. Okay. So NASDAQ, as you mentioned, there is what they call a seasoning period. On the NASDAQ, before all this kicked off, I think it was 3 months, they brought it back to 15 trading days. Right? The second one is you're meant to have a certain percentage of shares just floating around in the market so somebody can buy and sell whenever they want, right? And usually it's up around 10%. SpaceX have brought it down to 5%, right? Not them, but SpaceX, it's 5%, right? So that was the second one. The third one is if you're basically the market, regulators can look at a company and they'll decide, well, you've got, a certain amount of shares out there, but, really, we'll look at it at being 3 times the amount of shares that you actually have, right? So those are the 3 things that changed. So as far as regulators are concerned, if we say that 5% of SpaceX shares are on the market, they consider it 15% of shares just to make the market look more buoyant than it is. But it's also created this situation of manufactured scarcity, which was very, very good for the share price at the start, at its IPO. It ended up being 4 times oversubscribed. The shares were sort of offered initially at $135. I think they went to market at $150 on day one. They went up to $210 at one point. I was checking the share price yesterday, and I'll just check it now.
Well, I'm looking at it now. So 157 at the minute.
Okay, that is that is not good. That is not great performance.
Come on. It's the stock market. Things go up, things go down. That's the nature of it.
Yeah, I'm not. Well, I mean, we know this was going to happen. There would be sort of a goodwill bump, and then it will settle down into.
So it's done exactly as we expected. What's the shock horror there, Niall?
It's done exactly as it's expected. So, well, the thing is, right, because we know this is not a profitable company and we know it's not going to make money for a long time, if you bought shares and that initial bump is gone, you are now stuck with them. You are stuck with them. And, as you say yourself, the ETFs bought into it. You are stuck with them. So that's we have now entered the stuck with them phase on SpaceX.
And then you get into all kinds of tech things. Just to wrap up on this, I think it's really a little story came across the desk the other day, and I went, as we know, AI is driving the economy, and the S&P 500 and the markets and stuff like that are very heavily tech influenced at the moment. And then we've got the wars and everything that Trump is doing and all that kind of stuff. And there's the war with Iran and whatever, and that's kind of causing insecurity. On the tech side of things, an awful lot of technology is focused on Taiwan, because that's where they are producing the chips and that's where they're producing the RAM. All right. It's hugely important. All right. And then in the AI space, one of the key players globally is Israel. Both of those territories are really big flashpoints at the moment because Israel, as we know, everything's going on with them at the minute. And then with Taiwan, China want to take over Taiwan. They've always said that Taiwan is part of their island. So all we're waiting for, and I think that's the spark that's going to burst the bubble. And it'll be something to do with Taiwan. If China turn around and say, right, that's it, we're invading Taiwan, we've got a major problem on our hands for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, because who's that going to draw into it? Do you know what I mean? You've got Russia, you've got China, they want to take over. Then you've got the whole Western world is going to be in it. Then technology and everything that we rely on. And then if AI aren't going to deliver and that's going to, and then the stock prices collapse. And then you've got, breakdown in the financial system. Now, when I say a breakdown in the financial system, please, for the love of God, there is always a breakdown in the financial system. It goes up and it goes down, and that's the nature of things. And people are talking about the bubble at the moment. It's a part of life. It's going to go down. If it doesn't go down, it's not working. All right. So when it happens, don't be, oh my God, my life is over. All right. I remember the crisis of 2008. Do you know what got me through it? My wife only reminded me of it the other day.
What?
I went around for 6 months going, I believe there's a financial crisis on, but I've decided not to take part. Right. And it was literally just my mental attitude at the time going, all right, well, this is going on, but I'm going to deal with it. Yeah. And I did. And here I am, 20 years later and everything's fine. You've just got to remember that. But the point on my story there is that watch Taiwan, watch Israel, because I think one of those is going to be the one that blows up the AI bubble.
Okay.
There you go. Grant, listen, on that note, let's wrap it up for the news for this week. Now, as always, thanks for keeping us up to date.
Delivering Irish tech news since 2006. This is Tech Radio.
With so much misinformation and disinformation floating around our social media feeds, it can be quite easy to get taken in by bad actors who want either your money, your identity, or your vote. If you consider yourself tech savvy, you might be good at recognizing it, but we've all fallen victim to some kind of sensational headline or a bit of gossip or clickbait. But that's just us. We're into tech. What about our loved ones who might not be as skeptical? Angelika Sharagina is a PhD researcher at Trinity College and founder of MindShield AI, an edtech startup that uses neuroscience to combat disinformation and build digital resilience. Angelika has been named one of the 7 global emerging leaders in AI by the French government. She's also been listed in 30 under 30 by Ireland's Business Post and 133 Women Changing the World by Diversion.com. She's also a UN and TEDx speaker and has been recognised by the World Economic Forum's Global Shapers for her work in ethical information. So we were absolutely delighted to hear that Niall Kitson would get a chance to sit down and chat with her, which he did during the week. And here is their conversation ahead of the Knowledge Summit Dublin.
Angelika, thanks for joining us on the podcast today. Now, you have a background in conflict studies. At the moment, we've got 2 significant conflicts in the world, one in Europe and, of course, one in the Middle East. Now, I remember when I was growing up, I was following the Gulf War in Kuwait on Sky News, and it was very much the idea that this was the first televised war, that there was information coming from the battlefield on a 24/7 basis, that there was no getting away from the coverage. Really, it's nothing compared to what we are getting used to now online, which brings with it a whole other set of concerns because, where on television there are standards to be applied, there's rigor, information is, it's sourced, it's vetted before it's communicated. We don't really have that experience anymore, which makes misinformation and disinformation tremendously problematic. So, to what extent is information becoming ammunition in the zeitgeist?
Thank you for this extremely important question. I think that's a really important framing, ammunition, because what we actually really need is to have cognitive defense against these new tools that are out there to undermine public safety, mental sovereignty, and even the ability to perceive facts, and of course, decision making. So, what I see currently, even in the last 12 months, the whole information dynamics, the dynamics of misinformation changed rapidly because of the new tools. And even maybe 12 months ago, we could give some potential advice on how to detect fake AI generated content and be more in the loop of what's happening. Now, obviously the models are getting so much better that even top experts cannot really decide if it's fake or real until they do the further investigation. So that leads to the fact that generative AI has fundamentally changed the economics of misinformation. And in the past, even a couple years ago, I would say 2020, 2019, it required a troll farm to produce misinformation, to produce fake narratives. Now, the cost of misinformation is very cheap. It requires just one person with a laptop. And that leads to the situation where the whole information warfare is happening everywhere. The models that can produce endless tailored narratives are being used by different malicious actors across the world. And citizens are just not prepared to that. And I would say, in terms of the first question you asked, the change of the perception is there. People have so much of cognitive overload, especially in war zones. And not many people talk about this, but in war zones, information actually can cost you your life. And that comes to evacuations, humanitarian support, ceasefire announcements, or let's say it's time to actually the curfew, even curfews, like those things that could lead to unsafety of humans in the war zones because they just got the wrong information. And I've seen conflicts, and I've studied conflicts, and I've seen people actually really struggling because of the fact that they were misinformed, and that in the chaos of the war, that leads to terrible consequences. But one of the interesting things is people are so tired of this misinformation. They are aware, but that leads to them not trusting anything. And that is another big problem, where they don't trust anything they consume. And that leads to them being also not safe with information they receive. And in terms of the war zones, we can discuss it for a long time, because I'm very interested in understanding how we can learn those. How we can actually help learn from those case studies of the war zone and bring them to so-called stable countries. But we don't really have those stable countries anymore, because everybody is under attack at the moment.
I think what's kind of fascinating, what you're alluding to there, is that we have sort of on the one hand, this state of narrative dominance, that it doesn't really matter what the facts are on the ground, so long as one side controls the narrative of what's happening. But on the other, we have the constant need for those bite-sized bits of information, those little dopamine triggers that we are quite happy to expose ourselves to, and then, almost take on faith based on the source that is correct. But we've also seen pretty reputable sources end up having to roll back on things that they might have tweeted, information they might have shared, just because the demand for information is so strong that misinformation does slip through the cracks. The demand is far greater than the speed at which verification can keep up with, do you think?
Absolutely. And AI doesn't really help, because in this case, it generates content very quickly, and it distributes through bots coordinated in authentic accounts. And there's micro-targeting that could be used, for example, using emotionally charged posts that could potentially go viral. So there's all these techniques that are being used by different actors because there is a need. because people really want to feel like they are aware, and people want to feel that they control the situation. So there is this, on the one hand, this whole desire to understand everything that's going on there. But at the same time, there is a need to wait for verified content. But as you know, those platforms, they benefit from those situations. And of course, this amplification of the narrative that is potentially wrong, potentially charged, sometimes radicalized. It's unfortunately that's what's happening.
I think one good example of what's happening today, and possibly the platform with certainly the most traffic when it comes to discussing conflict at the moment, would be X, which people still use despite recent studies showing its very substantial right-leaning bias. Do you find that people are getting more literate in terms of the platforms that they are engaging in? You know, in the past where you would just visit Facebook, now it's like, okay, Facebook is for boomers, just automatically tell people what's on it is a lie. Don't let anyone use it as a news source. Versus X, where the dynamic is much more interactive, and you know, you can end up getting into a fight with somebody for hours on end.
Exactly.
Who may not even be a person. So
Absolutely.
do you think these skills are developing, that people are sort of realizing the limitations of platforms?
It's a great question, and it's a tricky one because it depends on the people. It depends on their level of awareness. It depends on the country they come from and the level of exposure to those manipulation techniques. So the problem is we have users coming from all over the world where they have potentially no understanding of manipulation techniques that appear before them. There's trolls, as you said, the bots that appear to be human, and there's the whole information campaigns that are targeted against certain groups of population. I would say no, because in terms of like the groups that I am aware of, it's younger generation, Gen Z, even younger generation Alpha, the ones that are actually at school now, the ones that we worked with, 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds, they have no clue. And that is a very big problem because those manipulation techniques, they can be used against them, and they have the ability to access chatbots, Snapchat, Telegram, unmoderated platforms. And it's very sad to see that sometimes this issue is not really being addressed enough, but that's what happens to children losing their lives because of misinformation, manipulation, and inappropriate communication with the tools that they're not supposed to use. And of course, the tech providers that designed those tools, they didn't put safety in design, and that already leads to horrible consequences. And when we are talking about war zones, another thing that many people don't know, that children and teenagers and women are being constantly targeted by very specific misinformation that is related to their own activities. And even intelligence officers, unfortunately, I'm not sure that, like, I'm not sure if we need to call that bit, but basically, there's been cases where in Ukraine, Ukrainian children were targeted by Russia to even be spies by different in different cities and villages, and that is a very common tactics against vulnerable populations. So, in terms of AI literacy, I'm more concerned about the younger generation and also senior citizens, of course, because these malicious actors, they are particularly targeting vulnerable populations, and that already has been done in so many cases in conflicts around the world. And you know, like in terms of it's not like, okay, you were being deep faked and that's fine. No, when Taliban took over Afghanistan, when someone deep faked that person did something, for example, in support of the U.S. at that time, the person would be prosecuted and killed. And there are cases where deep fakes were used as a source of evidence against the people. So across the world, we have the situation where disinformation disinformation can lead to potential losses of lives. And in terms of literacy, I think AI literacy, cognitive defense, and media literacy are the critical skills that are required to for survival in 21st century. And no matter if you're in Ukraine, Ireland, or Sri Lanka, or Australia, it doesn't matter. These are the most important skills, and those skills have to be taught. And I think those programs have to be compulsory.
So, in looking at the sort of influence campaigns that we're exposed to, whether it's paid influence campaigns on Facebook, whether it's viral campaigns on X, whether it's a deep fake that has been spread across platforms, what are the most effective tools out there at the moment? Are deep fakes taking over, or is there still a role for those sort of just viral narratives, if you will?
I would say that we have the situation where we have a lot of tools that are AI, but they're tools that are used to produce bad content, right? But to basically counter those things, we need to create more tools for AI for good. So, in that aspect, I would say there is lots of already existing tools, and different governments are using them to combat situations where it could be potentially national defense security issues. They are using AI tools to basically automate the potential detect and flag manipulation of highly risky and polarizing AI generated content, for example. So there are already those tools in use. Those tools are called AI cognitive firewalls, and those are existing ones, but we need better tools, because the problem is that AI generated content is so great, but those tools, they don't really keep up at the same speed. And to have that pace being at the same speed, we really need to have more investment in AI threat research. And one of the tools that I see as interventions, like when we talk about interventions that actually exist, the one of amazing interventions is inoculation and pre-bunking. It's basically proactively warning people about manipulation techniques that they might get acquainted with, or they might see in their feed. So basically preparation to the techniques that might be used against citizens. And interestingly, pre-bunking was used prior to the full-scale invasion in Ukraine. And that led to the situation where many citizens were not buying Russian propaganda, because they knew that those were the tactics that would be exposed against them. So there's lots of things around that, but there is no one-stop solution. So critical thinking trainings, fact-checking, media literacy, and all of these interventions, they are very important. And but the most important is to implement them together and make sure that citizens are prepared to narratives they might see. One of the things that I'm looking at in terms of the research of misinformation is looking at this as a virus. And what we are looking into is medical studies and borrowing interventions from medical field that proved to work in trials. And I think that is potentially a solution. But generally speaking, looking at the whole infodemic management as virus management would be a very good analogy, because then we would see this as a serious threat. And as you know, World Economic Forum rated misinformation and disinformation one of the biggest threats to humanity in both long run and short run. And that's definitely what's happening.
To take that analogy of the virus from a medical standpoint, of course, inoculation as young as you can actually get somebody is preferable. But do you find that children have the mental sort of apparatus to actually start learning about ethics at a very young age? Because we're used to sort of thinking of ethics as, part of philosophy. It's something you get exposed to in college more often, if that's a direction you want to take your academic career in. Are kids actually able to keep up? Are they able to learn ethics?
I think kids are very capable. And I think we definitely need AI literacy and ethics in the curriculum. I saw how in the classes, children as young as 9 are using Snapchats, Telegram channels, all these platforms that don't have parental control and being bombarded by content that is spread by bots that is inappropriate and dangerous for their psychology and mental health development. And that's happening in Ireland. It's not in a war zone. It's not somewhere far away. So it's in the classroom. So that led me to understand that we absolutely must have ethics in place because children are using tools too young. They already have the access. The platform filtering mechanisms on most platforms is supposed to be 13, even though that's too young still. But kids as young as 7 and 8 and 9 are still using ChatGPT and others and Grok and all these platforms. And if they can use the technology so young, I think they absolutely must have trainings in place. And banning smartphones, I don't think that would lead to kids just giving up their favorite games and tools. They will find their ways. So the best thing that we can do is actually support them and help them. And most importantly, keep those actors accountable. But in terms of your question, absolutely. I do believe that it's time to introduce those things early on because the problems that the generation before them had would not be the same. And that's why it's new issues to this generation in terms of how they will develop, how they are protected, even their physical safety. It's all determined by their online behavior. And that behavior can be shaped by supportive educational curriculums that would expose them to manipulation techniques, to ethics, to safeguards, to helping them protect themselves in the digital era.
And that was Angelika Shergina with Niall Kitson. Angelika is going to be speaking at Knowledge Summit Dublin on June 29th and 30th, which is happening at Trinity College in Dublin. You can find out more about it at knowledgesummitdublin.com. Tickets are going fast. We'll have that link, as always, for you in the show notes description area of this podcast.
This is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
Right, that's it for the show for this week. We have even more stories, believe it or not, online for you to check out, including what, Niall?
We have what to expect from Android 17. Wikipedia founder Jimmy Wales says no to AI editing. And Trump makes nice with Anthropic.
We're back again next Friday, providing that we don't melt in the meantime, with a brand new show for you. So please do remember to share our podcast with a friend. Just have to look up Tech Radio Ireland on Apple, Spotify or YouTube. Until next time, from myself, Dusty Rhodes, and from Niall Kitson, have a great weekend.
Remember, you can get the latest Irish tech news with hourly updates, daily newsletters and more at our website, techcentral.ie. Share the knowledge and invite a friend to listen. Search Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for Tech Radio Ireland. Tech Radio is produced by dustpod.io for techcentral.ie. From me, Artemis, live long and prosper.